For those tuning in at home, sorry about the delay there. We were probably making fun of you. Type in your name in the comments and we will let you know what we made fun of you for. Oh. Well, I know Miranda will tune in, so just let Miranda know your son's here, so we couldn't, so not you.
He already gave us info.
What?
He gave us the inside scoop.
No, we wouldn't do that. All right. So also just a quick reminder then there will be we're not going to stream our business meeting. If somebody's not going to be here, it's none of their business what our business is. Okay, let me back up on that. Our business doesn't need to go out and about. Just because somebody's not here Sunday 10 a.m., if they're part of this church, it is still their business how we run our business. Did that clarify? Thank you. That's what I meant. I didn't mean the first thing. If you're not here at Sunday school, then your opinion doesn't matter. And that's certainly not what we meant to say, but that is what I said. So, Hebrews chapter 8, let's pick it up here in verse 1. Remember, Hebrews is about Jesus being better, about the superiority of Christ over the Old Testament system. Jesus is superior to the angels. He's superior to the Old Testament sacrifice, superior to Abraham. We covered last week. He was Melchizedek. Melchizedek was Christ, I should say. And so now we're going to talk specifically this week through this chapter, the true tabernacle and the superiority of Christ over the tabernacle. And when we go through Hebrews, you could easily get lost if you just pick out a verse or two and try to figure out things just by 1, 2, or 3 verse grouping. You can, if you just use things out of context, teach that somebody could lose their salvation easily using a couple verses, but when you look at them in context, they teach actually the opposite. And that's why we don't just pick out a verse unsupported and start teaching on it, because then we'll start getting haywire. Hebrews chapter 8, let's pick it up here in verse 1. And like I said, I do think we'll still be out a couple minutes early tonight. Verse 1. Now the things which we have spoken, Now the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. So remember how Romans, when it gets to chapter 12, says therefore, or even Hebrews chapter 12, therefore, and we talked about how that's somewhat of a change in direction. Here, it's even more obvious. Now of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. So how about this? Let's sum up what we've covered so far and start using it. And so we're going to do that here. See, got to read. We have such an high priest who is set in the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens. See, Jesus was set on the right hand. No Old Testament priest ever sat down in the tabernacle. Jesus sat to teach in Luke chapter 4, and that's part of the reason the Bible says everybody's eyes were fastened on him. He was standing at the stoning of Stephen, but every time else we find him sitting at the right hand of the Father, he is seated. That's part of the reason that I believe that he was ready to come back at that time at the stoning of Stephen, but that's the final rejection of plan A for Israel, and so therefore didn't need to happen. But now he sits at the right hand of the Father and intercedes for us. This may not be a surprise for you, but you sin. And then Satan is the accuser of the brethren, so he tries to accuse you before the Father, and Jesus intercedes on our behalf, shuts Satan up. We won't hear this. That person's saved, therefore, my blood covers their sin. All has been fulfilled. Thus, Jesus' statement after, right before he died, it is finished. And so we'll get to that, more to that in this chapter. Verse 2, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man. And so, if you remember, the Old Testament guy was Bezalel. We'll read about him this year. Apparently, we'll get to him in about February, right? Leviticus, do the math. 3 chapters. We might get to them in February or something like that. So we'll be Bezalel will be another guy we talk about again, but he's the man that the Lord used most to make the tabernacle. It was fashioned after the one in heaven that was shown to Moses. We'll cover that in a few verses. Okay, so now the next 2 verses. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices, wherefore it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. So notice it speaks in the present tense about high priests, gifts, and sacrifices. Verse 4, for if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. So, it seems as though the writer is referring to the temple and present things that are happening there. So Hebrews was written before 70 AD. Yes, it's towards the end of the New Testament in page turning, but it's actually one of the earlier books written, and of course written with the Jews specifically in mind, as we've already covered. Verse 5. See, look at that. Verse 5, we are already almost halfway through this chapter. All right, verse 5. Who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things, as Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For, see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. So, now the question becomes, is that pattern, is it exact? Is it, well, this is what God showed me and we're making something close? I pulled up a picture of a tabernacle. I personally don't think that that's what the tabernacle in heaven looks like. I mean, would the tabernacle in heaven need to have things tying it down? This was made to be mobile, and I want to do a series on the tabernacle. We tried to do it once, and it was short. It was during Sunday school, and so I was bored with it. I want to maybe even do the tabernacle the next Bible study that we do, but. If you look on the sides here and read something that you disagree with, I was just looking for the picture and didn't take the time to Photoshop the rest of it white. So now you're all reading the side of it, aren't you? Let's see if we can find something here. And so this was built to be mobile. However, it says that Moses saw the one in heaven and was instructed to make one like it. Now that I look at this, slaughter tables, I'm not sure that is something. So then this furniture later on, remember, was moved then into the temple. And so we're going to cover that in a minute too. And so there you go. And you see the measurement of what an American football field. There's only one type of football. And one kind of football. The rest is soccer. And so does that make you mad? Does that make anybody mad? I'm going to try a new thing. It makes you mad, good. This whole, America's the worst. Humans are the worst. Yay, we suck. Whole thing. I'm going to start just hammering people for that. Don't come at that. Humans do good things. We're not a disease on a planet. Holy cow. And so then American football, the way football was supposed to be made and perfected, now I'm just rubbing it in. Am I making anybody mad yet? No. Okay. All right. So, but then you see the size over there comparison. The interesting thing, though, remember the tabernacle is a picture. What?
I said I feel like we should clap. Like when you say that.
I feel like I should put an American flag coming on across, waving across the TV. Billions of people would disagree with you. Well, yeah, back when they invented soccer, all they had is these severed heads laying on the ground and, some rocks. So they started kicking them back and forth. Hey, you can't touch that with your hands. Ooh, yeah, I wouldn't touch that either. And so then as we progressed, we started killing some animals and using their skins and blowing air into them and putting pipes at the end of the pasture. And then we started throwing the stupid thing like it's supposed to be done.
Sounds just like football. You sound like that.
That did, didn't it?
Little rat there.
Huh.
Two types of countries. Those that landed on the moon and those that use the metric system.
In case you did you all hear that?
No.
Chris said there's 2 different types of countries. Those that have landed on the moon and those that use the metric system. But of course, we know that they use the metric system in order to NASA uses metric, so it's kind of funny. But still, see, that's the kind of thing. It's a brazen, willing ignorance that you throw into the joke. It just makes the joke better.
So we're not getting done early.
Drip. All right.
Welcome to the club.
I think that's a good idea to do the Tabernacle.
Do ya?
Yeah.
Thank you, Jackie.
I remember when we tried it when we did it in Sunday school, and it was good.
It was. I never liked teaching Sunday school, though. So that was part of the problem.
But I think it would be good.
Thank you. Feedback is always welcome, especially positive feedback. That negative stuff, we're going to put boxes on the back of this new year, part of that new us, new you thing. We're just going to have trash cans there for you to put your suggestions in. And no, that's not the case. Anyways, all right, what were we talking about? American football, metric system. There's two different types of people in the world, those that know the binary and those that don't. Oh, 10. Tabernacle. Yes, okay. So Jackie called it. Our next Bible study series after this will be the Tabernacle. And we can, show things up here also as well. And I think that would be helpful because it was just printouts at the time. Then we're going to get into that would necessitate going into the temple, exactly where the temple was. And man, I saw a video that it blew my mind, but it's been months, about the location of the temple, because I've always taught this whole time that there's going to be such peace that the temple and the mosque in Jerusalem would be side by side, or maybe even toppled and put there. But that's actually not the mound where the temple was. The mosque is built on a Roman fort, not on the side of where the temple was. The temple was next to it. Anyways. All right. So part of what the 40 days of Moses being on Mount Sinai were about, the law, plans of the tabernacle, all sorts of neat stuff. The tabernacle here was a picture of the redemption of Jesus Christ. And one of the things we're going to cover is when they camped, if you look at where the camps were, the smaller tribes were at the north, larger tribes including Judah were at the south, and then east and west were both about the same size in numbers. So it's interesting, if you looked at it from above, when Balaam got on the mountain to bless Israel, or to curse Israel, then ended up blessing him, when he came to the top and he overlooked it, he saw the shape of a very large cross up there. I think that's just cool stuff because of how they were situated. And that's if it's straight lines and you're thinking, man, that's horribly unprofessional for a pastor to put his foot on the pulpit and scratch his calf. But I don't know, I've got something in my sock here. Sorry about that. Crazy here tonight. You can go ahead and go off this now. So with this, I think it brings a question, and that's this whole thing, the tabernacle, the Israelites. Is Christ real? Is he real to us? I don't believe, I'm not as impressed when somebody, tells me, oh, God told me this. And, I was watching a video the other day trying to figure out something. And this guy was talking about how the Lord told him to turn to Amos. I'm sorry. The second you say that, you lose me. If it was that easy, it just isn't. But, we don't preach on politics a lot here. I threw them in a little bit Sunday morning. I figured, hey, we might be have a little bit more fun and mention it from time to time. Why don't we preach on politics? Because heaven is real. Why don't we jump on all the social issues? Because Jesus is real. There's bigger things to talk about, and we're not gathering to talk about those things. Although if we bring them up from time to time, it's fun. So the Bible and Jesus, watch this, teaches us how to live in a system. If we end up going a different direction politically and our country is, all of a sudden ends up in some other, the Bible's still true. People lived through a lot worse things than I was about to say worse things than communism, but I guess our death toll numbers that we showed Sunday morning would prove that false. Anyways, so now let's get to verse 6. Now that you're all nervous because I said 5, but So now the new covenant is better than the old. We know this, but it's now going to be explained in depth. But now hath he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant. So again, the word better is used there 13 times throughout the book of Hebrews, which was established upon better promises. So the tabernacle itself was temporary. It was mobile. It was replaced by the temple, and even the temple itself was destroyed a few times. I think there were, 3 temples? There might have been two temples, 2 main temples, but even with the 2, some, in points in history, they're ransacked, things stolen, things brought back, rebuilt. And so then that would make 2 temples. The original temple, Herod's temple. Yeah, and Jesus walked in Herod's temple. That's right. All right. The Herod's temple would be the 3rd then, right? How have I forgotten this? Does anybody know how many temples there were?
I thought there was only 2.
I thought there was 2. But there's Herod's temple. Was that the same one that was rebuilt by Nehemiah and Ezra?
I thought that was
Okay. All right. 2. So watch this. Jesus is permanent and priests weren't. Covenants and testaments required death. So Jesus' death was the seal and promise of the new covenant. Right? So, now remember, New Testament versus Old Testament on terminology. If you were speaking to somebody who is of the Jewish faith, I've asked the question before. I say what we call the Old Testament. I don't, hey, you believe the Old Testament. That's, I'm not going to refer to their book and what they believe as old, but what we refer to the Old Testament, maybe get the proper terminology. But old is not referring to the books or the truth. Old is referring to the covenant. Old is referring to the testament. It's not referring to the writing. Does that make sense? So it's not like that's when we read through the Old Testament now until September because of Josie. When we're still and you're trying to power through Numbers, you're trying to power through Jeremiah, and that'll be fun. When we're trying to power through Numbers chapter 7, and whatever we're trying to power through. But the thing is, those aren't old as in useless. Those are just the old system. Jesus' death, his covenant, changed it. So, now catch this. And this comes, I don't know why this has been talked about so much lately, but everyone is a dispensationalist. It gets discredited from time to time. It's just that everyone's a dispensationalist, even if they're an atheist, they're a dispensationalist, because the world has worked differently from time to time. Now, we as Christians, once you say Old Testament, you're a dispensationalist. You just maybe don't, put the titles on it like somebody else does. Now look at verse 7. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. Now it's interesting, that doesn't say that the Old Testament, the Old Covenant is wrong. And then the question becomes, where is the fault? See, the old system never saved. We use the illustration from time to time, Dr. Law, Dr. Grace. You go to a general practitioner to find out what a problem is, but you go to a specialist to get the problem fixed. I have a pain over here. Is there something over here? Whatever. And so my esophagus, down here towards the bottom left. And I think my spleen's on this side. And but I know I'm referring to my appendix, by the way. And I got my xiphoid process here. Just got to throw stuff out there so you even look at me. You know what a xiphoid process is. Just so you don't think I'm ignorant and calling the esophagus over here. You have a xiphoid process here. It's underneath your sternum. When you're giving chest compressions, that's the thing you have to be careful not to break, because you don't want the xiphoid process to bend down and poke down and give somebody internal injuries. So just in case you think that. Did somebody just snore? All right. Oh, yeah, Jackie, you were right. You were so right. But anyways, so what we do, Dr. Law points us to... The law points us to Jesus, because the law cannot save. So it's Dr. Law, Dr. Grace. It's like going to a general practitioner and then you go to a specialist to get something fixed. So now watch this in verse 8. For finding fault with them. So wait, verse 7 says, for if that first covenant had been faultless, but verse 8 tells us for finding fault with them. Come to find out, it's not really the law, it's not the covenant that was faulted. It's the people. We can't handle the law. So it says here, for finding fault with them, he saith, Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. So that's, of course, from Jeremiah. So the fault wasn't with the law, but with the people. Verse 9, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continued not my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. So the covenant was broken. So here's the question. Can the old covenant was broken by the people. Can the new covenant be broken by people? So if the covenant is simply the death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus Christ, and then the covenant is to believe and be born again, can that covenant be broken? Can your sins or your evil deeds break the covenant? No. Your deeds could break the old covenant, but your deeds can't break the new covenant because it can't kill you. There's a difference between, and we covered this about, salvation isn't about good and bad. Salvation is about dead and alive. And so that covenant cannot be broken, hence another reason for eternal security. So remember, Jesus is better. Jesus can't be crucified again. He said it is finished, and therefore it was. So either we have eternal security, or if you lose it, you can never get it back. You cannot be unborn. So verse 10, For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel. After those days, saith the Lord, I will put my laws into their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be to me a people. So this either refers to one of two things. It refers to the Holy Spirit's indwelling at John 22, when Jesus breathed on and said, I will give you another comforter. He will teach you all things. Or it's referring to the millennium. Either way, know this, the law will be followed again during the millennium. It won't be an issue for us because, remember, we're going to be in perfect bodies. However, the law being followed by natural-bodied people is going to be a problem for them. So, either the law as we know it during the millennium or an amended one. And the understanding of Matthew shows this. I would have done that on a video coming up this week for you had Josie not piped up and said we needed the Bible instead of the New Testament. I was going to explain this. I was ready to explain this, but now we'll just wait, and you'll get that in September now. Good job, Josie. Do you feel special? Good. Verse 11. For they shall not teach every man his neighbor and every man his brother, saying, Know the Lord. I want to really hammer home again what I said Sunday morning, also referring to this. Don't ever think that this whole soul winning thing we do, going door to door, is a new thing. It's always been a thing. Always, always, always been a thing. And Esther, they got scared and they became Jews. How does that work? Even Jesus said to the Pharisees, you transverse, what do you say transversed? You go to these different places and then you make a proselyte and you make that person 2 times a child of hell you are, right? Okay, we're not trying to make people child of hell, but at the same time, the whole teaching is there. The Pharisees were soul winning of some sort. They were doing some sort of evangelism. Don't let people, what about that guy in Mongolia? Somebody's probably been there. And just because you don't know about it doesn't mean that it didn't happen. All right. And every man to his brother saying, Know the Lord, for all shall know me, from the least to the greatest. So least and greatest, remember that is also in reference to the kingdom of heaven, not heaven. I don't believe in heaven we're going to have the least and greatest rank. I believe that's talking about during the millennium when Jesus is reigning on earth and you can actually walk to Jerusalem at the time. Walk, fly, I'm not sure how we're going to do that. Verse 12. For I will be merciful to their unrighteousness, and their sins and their iniquities will I remember no more. So that may bring it back to referring to the current age and the Holy Spirit's indwelling, because when it comes to the millennium, those sins will be remembered, but it's be remembered by God in the present when people do them. So it can be looked at either way, and I think either one is valid. Verse 13, And that he saith, a new covenant, he that made the first old, now that which decayeth and waxeth old is ready to vanish away. So the law has vanished, and we aren't held to any part of it. However, here's what we need to know. God's morality has not changed. The principles are still there. No one can hold us to the law, and we cannot demand others to adherence to the law. The law is nothing. However, when people say, well, God didn't ever repeat that. Like, okay, I don't care what you do. I'm just going to use this as an example. No, I can't use that example. What's something that was mentioned once in the Old Testament, never again? There's inevitably, when I use one, that people get bent out of shape. All right, I'm going to use it anyway, see if it makes you mad. No, I can't use that one. Okay, let's use this one. If God mentions something only one time in the Old Testament, then people completely dismiss it because it's only mentioned in the Old Testament. Do you realize that bestiality falls underneath that category? That's never brought up again in the New Testament other than in principle, sexual immorality. It's kind of crazy. Well, God never mentioned that again. Well, he kind of did. The New Testament is chock full of things that, it isn't about focusing on the lack of morality. It's about focusing on being righteous and doing righteous things. And so the law should not be tossed out in that we don't read it, we don't, learn from it. But of course, we are not to adhere to it in any fashion. The law was totally incapable of producing any good thing in man. Paul said in Romans chapter 7, "For I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing." And so if that was true for Paul, it's true for you as well. One illustration will hit the house. I read this today describing the law. And there was somebody who got distracted while cooking. Well, have you ever heard this one about overcooking the roast? Neither had I. And so a roast was being cooked, and somebody got distracted while they're cooking and overcooked it. Panicked a little bit, started running towards the kitchen, went out, used a fork, tried to get the roast out of the pan, and it was overcooked, so it fell apart. Tried to get closer to the bone, pushed a little bit harder, tried to pick up, and it fell apart. Finally, used a spatula to get the roast out of the thing and put it on a different pan, and it still fell apart, but the spatula worked. Does that mean that the fork just doesn't get used anymore? No, the fork is perfectly fine. It was the roast that was the problem. We don't follow the law because we can't, and because there's not a problem with the law. The law isn't what's sinful. We are. And so it's not, that fork was perfectly, it can be used for something else, but however, it's not used in that context anymore because the roast itself is overcooked and falling apart. We are sinful. We can't adhere to the law, and trying becomes futile. Sorry, mispronounced. But however, our attempt to follow the law in order to go to heaven then results in not trusting Christ as our Savior, which is the only thing that matters. The death, burial, resurrection of Jesus Christ, what gets us to heaven. The law points out our sin, points out how much we fall short, and points to Christ, who is the better testament, the better sacrifice, and superior to every aspect of the Old Testament. 5 minutes early. You were getting nervous over there. Actually, I was getting nervous over here. I thought, too many rabbit trails. See, but you guys provoked me tonight on the rabbit trails. It was football. Then let's start another rant. Go ahead and cut me off.